Welcome to the Love Mondays podcast. My goal is to bring inspiring and authentic guests on the show who can have a profound impact on my viewers and listeners. They can help everyone love their Mondays and be truly excited and intentional about the life they are living every single day. I'm very excited to have Ali and Scott Svenson on the podcast. Ali and Scott are such an amazing team. They founded two businesses in London, the Seattle Coffee Company, which they ultimately sold to Starbucks, and then co-founded Carluccio's, which was a deli-style restaurant. They are now running a phenomenal restaurant chain in the US. Mod Pizza, which has over 500 locations and was the fastest growing restaurant chain in the US. Ali is the protector of the purpose, and Scott is the CEO. What really struck me about Scott and Ali is how they were able to develop a thriving business and focus on the social impact they were having. For example, they hire individuals who had multiple felonies and folks who were recently released from drug and alcohol rehab centers. They help all employees develop their potential, and they know the ripple effect will be massive. If you treat employees well, they will treat customers well, and the virtuous cycle will continue. They've also done this while raising 4 boys. Wow. Ali and Scott, thank you so much for being on my podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, it's a pleasure.
Fantastic. Okay, I'm going to start with my very simple but profound question. I really want to help more people love their Mondays, and you both seem to have a genuine zest for life in what you do. What advice would you give to folks who maybe don't love their Mondays right now?
You want to start?
Sure. I'm happy to. So that's a great question. And we certainly are not unique in that there were times in our life where, getting motivated and inspired on a Monday morning was a challenge. I think the thing that has certainly helped us is making sure that we're filling our life with things that we're excited about. And we've used it as our own personal reference, kind of the snooze button test, which is if you're living your life in a way where you're continually hitting the snooze button and you are not excited to meet and greet the day, then you should ask yourself, I think, serious questions about how you're spending your time, how you're investing your time, and what your purpose is, what the objective or mission is of what you're trying to accomplish. And we've certainly found that anything that you do that's worthwhile is going to be hard, and sometimes hard means you'd rather do something easy. But if there's a meaning behind it and a purpose and something that draws you, that's meaningful to you, we've found that that's the thing that gets us through it and that gets us inspired. We were fortunate in that we were able to spend time together in some of our stores yesterday, and we were just talking about this earlier this morning. That to us is that moment when we are able to take all the work that we're doing, the things that it's like the athlete who's working in the gym, and then you get into the game and you realize, okay, this is why I was doing it. And being in the stores yesterday with some of our amazing leaders, talking to them about their experience at Mod and the impact Mod's had on their life and their future hopes and dreams, we came away from that and we had the same answer that we always do, which is, man, we've got to work harder because this is working. It's having a positive impact on people's lives, and they're counting on us. And it's that type of motivation and engagement that creates the inspiration for us to get out of bed in the mornings before the alarm goes off and get after it. Even though sometimes that's hard work and it's not necessarily the most fun work, we know why we're doing it, which makes it incredibly gratifying and rewarding.
I agree with everything that Scott has said. And the other thing that came to mind with your fun question one of the privileges of growing older is you get perspective. And there's this little book that we came across a couple of years ago. I can't remember the title of it now, but it had this saying in there about, it asks the question, is your glass half full or half empty? And the response is, well, start with thinking about how lucky you are to have a glass. And it makes me think of the Monday thing too. I feel like we've arrived at a stage in life where definitely there was a grind element for many, many years where, like everybody, Monday could be hard. And I would say we're at the stage in life where we're starting to realize, how lucky to have a Monday. Yeah. And it changes how you think about things once you get to that stage. You're lucky to have a Monday.
Yeah, no, I love that answer right from the snooze button, right? And I always say I wish the snooze button wasn't invented, but I think it's a good way to just test out, are you living with purpose, right? And Scott, you went to purpose, and Ali, I really like how you talked about, hey, you have a glass, so gratitude is something that you brought into that equation as well. And then the hard work, right? And I love your athlete reference there, right? Putting in the hard work, but there's a purpose, and going to the stores, right? It's such a cool thing just to go out and seeing the impact you're having on every single individual. Awesome. I think those are some fun lessons. Okay, before we dive into business, what do you both do for fun outside of work, and why is that important? And Ali, maybe I'll start with you this time.
I think we've again, part of the benefit of getting older and having more experiences is we're definitely at the stage where we are very clear in understanding what gives us joy and what energizes us and what fills our cup. And it's pretty simple. So we're lucky. We're very synced up. We love to take walks, and we love to have time, just to be and to think. We love to get out in nature. That seems to be something that very quickly can energize us and fill us up. Get a lot of inspiration when we're with other people who inspire us. It's simple stuff. We don't need big fancy things. The gift of time and the ability to just be. We love walking with our dogs. We like being outside. And of course, probably the ultimate for us is when we get time with our boys, which is rare because they're all growing up and scattered. And I would say that's kind of the ultimate joy generator for us.
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's a great way of framing up the fact that on our journey, like so many people, you start your life and you assume that, man, if I go out and work hard, I'm going to put myself into a position where I can accumulate a lot of stuff, and I'm going to have money and toys, and that's going to lead to happiness. And you get on this treadmill, and what we've realized is, and we're fortunate because we've had great mentors and advisors and experiences that have led us here, which is we know that's not what leads to happiness for us. And for us, it's very simple. It's time together. It's time with our family. It's time in nature. We love to get exercise, whether or not it's an amazing hike in the mountains, or a walk, or some other activity together. And like Ali said, time with great friends and inspiring conversation. And we've spent a lot of time in the mountains of Idaho, as an example. And we've traveled the world, and we've been very fortunate to be in a lot of amazing places. And it was just a few years ago that Ali and I were on a hike in Idaho in a place that we've been 100 times. And we looked at each other and said, there's no place in the world right now we would rather be than right here on this mountain together. And, we could be in Africa or Europe, but when you know what makes you happy, and you don't need to complicate things. And one of the things that Ali said, that I completely agree with, is you get a little bit older and a little bit wiser, and you realize that it's quite often the simple things, the little things, that are the most important things. And if you allow yourself to see that and appreciate it without getting caught up in, but society would have me believe that if I have a bigger car or a bigger house or that's what's going to lead to happiness. And we're very fortunate that I think we've come to a realization that, for us at least, that's not the path. And it's quite often the simple things.
Yeah, no, I really love that answer. And I think it's great perspective, right? Because the saying comparison is the thief of joy popped in my head as you said that, right? Because, especially, a couple like you who run a massively successful restaurant chain, and you're boiling it down to the simple things, a hike. And I love that example on the mountains of Idaho, where you both looked at each other and say, despite all the other places, you're living in the moment and loving it. So I think there's so many cool lessons there. Okay, let's jump to entrepreneurship. And I think it's, my theory is it starts with something you're passionate about, and then takes hard work, as you mentioned, belief, and 100% dedication, and learning from failures. I'd love your take on, having started 3 successful businesses, what are some lessons learned along that journey?
Oh gosh, where to start? I mean, I agree with you around the growth mindset, and the fact that success is always on the far side of trial and error and failure. And embracing that and understanding that and celebrating that, as opposed to fearing it. I think you mentioned this earlier, but man, fear is something that we all have to be very aware of. It exists. It's a reality of life, and it's a healthy thing in some contexts. But if you allow it to control your life, it can be incredibly disempowering. And I think that's one of the things that Ali and I have been fortunate around, is that we have gotten to a point where the fear of failure is not something that is debilitating for us or paralyzing. We were fortunate early where we were maybe more motivated by the fact that we had a mantra or saying, which is failure is simply not an option. And that was motivating because once you take that off the table, then you can just focus on, okay, how are we going to be successful? Because we were at a point in our life early on when we started our first business, and the Warren Buffett quote, which is, as opposed to spreading your eggs all around, just put all of your eggs in one basket and just watch that basket very carefully. We did that with our first business, and it was fantastic. And it was very clarifying in our heads that with all of our eggs in one basket, failure was not an option. And there were many times that without that clarity of focus, it might have been easier to give up or to back off or to take an easier path. But when you're in it and you're above, your eyes, then it's like, well, we know that's not an option. We've rowed up onto the shore, we burned the boat, and now it's just a matter of how we're going to climb the mountain. And that was incredibly, very early lesson for us, but an incredibly important one, and one that we've had to learn over and over again, because once we had that early success, then in the future, when you're making those decisions, the reality is failure is an option. And you have to then get your mindset right around, okay, we know that if we failed here, we're going to be okay. So how do we have the same focus and clarity of intent that we had in the past? But that resolve, that commitment, which leads to perseverance, and which I think is such an incredibly important part of success in life, is just not giving up and not being fearful of failure, but working through it, is something that was a really important lesson for us early on.
I think the secret or essential element then becomes, if what you're doing is something that you so deeply believe in or are completely and utterly passionate about. For us, that's the key to it. And would never want to or be able to be successful in pursuing something that we didn't think absolutely was meant to happen, needed to happen, we could help make happen. If you don't have that sense of belief, I just think it's too easy, and there are too many opportunities to just bail on what you're doing. And having whether it's failure not an option being the driver, or just simply an absolute utter belief in every cell of your being that this thing needs to happen, it must happen, we want it to happen, you make it happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. So many people, and we love entrepreneurs and entrepreneurship, and where sometimes we see people going off track a little bit is they want to be an entrepreneur, so they get very focused on where's there an idea or an opportunity where we can go make a bunch of money. And I think often that's kind of getting the cart before the horse, or the prioritization backwards. To Ali's point, we've always been drawn to things where we saw a need and we're like, this has to exist. This has to, and we felt like compelled to address that, as opposed, and almost having to like talk ourselves into it, because we're like, well, there are other things we could be doing and should be doing. And so we weren't forcing ourselves to try to create the business opportunity. We were almost like compelled or drawn that this is something that had to happen or needed to happen. And we were there just to fulfill on that. And we were passionate about it. And I get that as a young entrepreneur coming out of school or what have you, it's like, well, I've got to find that thing, and it's just so important to check yourself as to what your motivations are. Because if it's just to get out and make money, that's a bargain where when it gets really hard, it's going to be easier to take the easier path, or to give up or to back down, as opposed to if your motivations are maybe more pure, more fundamental, more rooted in something that really matters to you.
And I would go so far as to say, I think we to Scott's point, we actually tried. We used to have a saying, we tried to fail fast. Like we would actually, especially with the coffee business, and most definitely with Mod, very early on, rather than take the locations or do the sites that were sure things, that we actually actively tried to do the things that would help prove or give us reason to doubt and say, well, maybe this isn't such a must do situation, and tried to find all the reasons why it might not work or why it might not make sense, to kind of test ourselves and just the concept, and our commitment to it. And that has helped us.
Yeah, it's so interesting how you changed your definition almost of failure as time went on, and it's now a very intentional fail forward culture. And when the leaders like yourself embrace that, I think it permeates all the way down the organization, right? To just say, hey, we want to test and learn. And it brings me to the next question, which is, this is the third business that you have run. And I know, I listened to another podcast which said your first 4 restaurants, very mixed results, and I believe you had to close one of them. So was it the fact that you had 2 successful businesses already that helped you continue, or how do you give entrepreneurs that encouragement to keep going even when they see those seemingly significant setbacks?
It's a great question. And I think in the context of Mod, we had a very specific set of objectives and intentions when we were opening our first few stores. Back to Ali's point, fail fast and really understand the scope of what's possible. And because of our previous experiences and the learnings from the first 2 businesses we started, with Mod, we took a very intentional path. Typically, when you're starting a restaurant company, the path will be, let's go open locations in the most obvious areas where the chances of failure are the lowest. And that is totally valid. The reality is you're not going to learn as much as you might need to when you start thinking about how that's going to potentially scale. So for us, we took a much more intentional path of, with the concept and the idea in mind, let's frame up what we think what's possible here, and then let's go test those things in a very thoughtful, intentional way, which we knew going in was not necessarily going to set us up to have the most profound success on a per unit basis initially, but it would set us up to learn what we needed to learn so that we could make the decision, is this something we wanted to commit to really growing in a more profound way? And with that, we opened stores in locations, trade areas, formats that were intended to learn as opposed to intended to just go pick the low-hanging fruit. And I'll give you a small example. For those in the Seattle area, they will know well the place called University Village, which is a very successful lifestyle center. Concepts that go there inevitably do very well because it's a fantastic center, a lot of customers and so forth. About a mile or so away is a place called the University District, which is the kind of where the students hang out near the university. It's a grittier, grungier, the University Village, there are probably a handful of those types of centers in the entire country. So going there and having profound success feels good, but it's not necessarily going to tell us a lot about how this will scale across the country. The University District is a district that sits next to universities all around the country. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of those types of trade areas around the country. We were given an opportunity early in our life to go to the University Village. Most brands would jump at that. We chose instead to go to the University District, which was a much harder, less appealing trade area, but it was more representative of what the country had to offer, and we would learn more. A lot of people thought we were crazy, but we did it very intentionally. And that store was marginally successful financially, but it was very successful in terms of helping us learn and understand what the future might hold. So there's an example of kind of that intentionality early, which was a byproduct of having done this a few times before and having, therefore, the knowledge, but also the courage to be able to tell the story to our investors and backers that we're not trying to go and just run the score up with these first few stores. We're trying to learn. And because of our track record and the people who backed us before, they got that, they understood it. And so we were all on the same page. But then you have to be really intentional around, we're putting the store here for these reasons. Here's what we're trying to test. And then you have to be honest with yourself about how you assess the results and the feedback, because the other risk to manage is just the revisionist history of, well, we put it there for this reason, but now things didn't turn out the way we wanted, so we're going to kind of maybe spin this a little bit differently because it sounds better. That you can start to get yourself into some problems if you're not intellectually honest with yourself. But yeah, when we first started, it was a trial and error. We learned a lot, but we had some failures early. But I would suggest that those failures were some of the most important lessons that we learned that helped us position the business very successfully for that phase when we started to grow.
Yeah, that's such a cool story of picking the harder path, but you're playing the longer game and really a learning mentality. And I do want to pick up on your previous answer, because I love how you said money is it should be an outcome as opposed to the objective. And I wanted to link that back to, how do you develop a purpose that's strong enough to avoid the snooze button and jump out of bed before the alarm? How did you go about developing that purpose?
I would say it came down to, we paid attention to some things that were going on around us. We really love the poet Mary Oliver. We quote her instructions for living a life all the time: pay attention, be astonished, and tell about it. And very early in the life of Mod, which is now almost 15 years old, I mean, with our second location, we had already employed some of these individuals that had significant barriers to employment. And they were incredible. We were watching and witnessing them do such incredible things. I mean, the way they took care of each other and the way they took care of customers and the way they worked, and they really inspired us. And it was very eye-opening. And we realized that it was the direct result of the opportunity they'd been given in the form of a job. And so for us, it wasn't about let's create a purpose. We observed a dynamic that was very inspiring to us and very motivating, because we realized, well, that's something, we don't care if the world has more pizza offerings. That's not something that is going to get us out of bed. But what will get us out of bed is the idea that we might be part of creating more possibilities like this. And if we can build out a platform where we are able to witness more of this happening, that's something that we're interested in doing. And the purpose of Mod, this purpose to serve people and to really create opportunities for people and be a force for good, took hold very early on. But it wasn't our idea. It was our observation of some incredible contributions that people made.
Just to add to what Ali was saying, I think the way that the purpose at Mod came to life was exactly as Ali said, which was us providing a direction for our team. Hey, we want to use this business as a platform to make a positive social impact, and then allowing them to help us discover the specific strategy or approach. The reason why it was so important for us, and it was so empowering and inspiring for us, is this all connected to some very strong philosophical views that we have developed over our lifetime. And as we've been on this journey together, we have a very strong belief that the world, our communities and our society have a bunch of challenges, and we want to be contributors to trying to move things in the right direction. A big part of the challenge we face is the lack of equality, equity, and opportunity in society today. And specifically, the thing that really gets Ali and I worked up is this idea that everybody deserves an equal opportunity to pursue their hopes and dreams. Equal opportunity, not equal outcome. Everyone deserves an equal opportunity. The reality is the playing field, though, is far from level. And so the question is how do you level the playing field? And we have always believed that one of the most powerful forces in our society is business. And if we leave all of these problems to the public sector, to government to solve, I think we're leaving out of the equation one of the most powerful forces that we have in our society, which is to bring the power of capitalism and business and to the table to help address these issues. And so the thing that motivated us at this chapter in our life when Mod came to life was how do we use business as a force for good to help solve many of the challenges that we have in our communities? And so that was highly inspiring, complicated, challenging, but highly motivating for us to help be a part of that journey. And then when we started to work with our team, okay, how are we going to use mod to address those challenges and opportunities? That's where the team came to the table and started to show us how that could happen at mod. And man, once that locked in, because it's so connected to a philosophical belief that we had, we were locked in, and we're like, we're doing this, and we're going to do this in a big way. It was challenging because we could see this is not an easy path. Building a restaurant chain is not easy. Combining that with this additional motivation or intention was more difficult, but that was a challenge that we were excited about taking on, to be a role model for people, to say you can build a best-in-class business and embed a purpose into it that is going to contribute to making your communities and the society more generally a better place. And that's been the journey we've been on, and our team has really shown us and led us on how to do that at mod, against a framework where we simply said to the team, we're using this business as a force for good. That's our true north. Now help us figure out how to do that.
Well, and the mod's purpose was very much revealed to us. I think that's the distinction that we want to make sure is made. It was revealed to us, and we've always realized the power in authenticity, and when something is revealed to you and it actually has come about from very real and not forced or artificial means, it's much easier and I would say smarter to pursue something that's very authentic versus something that it's not. And mod's purpose really came to be from such authentic ways and people and observations, and that is, we were simply, like Scott said, able to see that, witness that, and decide, great, that we're on board for that. We want more of that.
Yeah, no, that's beautiful. And I really feel you're changing the world. I mean, I grew up in Kenya and Africa, and I came to Canada and the playing field was leveled, right? And your point's well made. It's, hey, then I still have to take the opportunity. I still have to put in the hard work, but it's about leveling the playing field. And that's such a deep purpose. I really feel it as you're talking about it. And then to see the culture ensue and just encourage that is fantastic. It's such a really cool story that has changed lives across America. And one of my questions is, you have to open in Canada. I don't see any locations in Toronto yet, but I'd love to hear about that a little later. But tell me a little bit, Ali, about what does protector the purpose mean? I think it's a natural question coming out of this last answer.
Yeah, I think at this point, to be honest, I think it's more symbolic than anything else, because at mod, our purpose is people. And so to be thinking about how do you protect that, it's something that is shared throughout our entire organization. I mean, the truth is, I would say protector of purpose is more of a symbolic call to action that really, again, is in observation of it. It's a responsibility that everybody at mod has, protecting this idea of how can you truly be of service and in service to others. And I think it's probably more because we've been around since the beginning. So kind of the elder in the room, able to remind people of the stories of how truly authentically mod's purpose did come to be. And when people are reminded of that, it's very motivating, because this was not something that came out of a book or a business plan or something. This came out of people doing the right thing with what they had, which early on was a job. And so our purpose has very much always been about and for and in service of people. And so protecting that really is, I think we just need to keep talking about it, that going back to the Mary Oliver quote, be astonished and tell about it. And so protecting our purpose, I think, has a lot to do with just reminding people of the why of this business, and because we were there to witness its birth, the responsibility sits with us to keep that awareness alive.
Ali is a great conscience for the organization, from the perspective that as the team comes together and gets into the day-to-day, there's you get caught up in the work and the the projects and the initiatives and the goals. And sometimes somebody needs to step back and remind people why we're doing this, and making sure that we're not losing sight of that as we're driving the business forward. Because with the best intentions in the world, if someone gets their head down, you can start to drive things maybe a little bit off center.
Yes.
And Ali has this great ability to just kind of nudge people back and remind people about what our true calling is, what our mission and purpose is. And it's a great kind of balance within the organization.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I was introduced to both of you by Jim Alling, and he was introduced to me by Howard Bihar, who I'm not sure if you know Howard, but it's so amazing to see the common put people first philosophy and how it's led to such fantastic results, but more importantly, how it's changed people's lives. Right. And you talked about using capitalism for good, which is fantastic. Absolutely love it. Okay, so I want to move on a little bit, and I want to, what does modness mean? Or tell me the mod way of life. I've heard those sayings a couple of times.
Yeah, I mean, spreading modness is the ripple effect of doing the right thing. And again, that's something that we've just observed. And, we now have a saying at Mod, if we see something or we witness something amazing or inspiring, people just being nice, a random act of kindness, we call them random acts of modness, we can just say to each other, gosh, that person's so mod. And it really does mean they just intuitively, they're doing the right thing. And the ripple effect of that is profound. And we've seen it again and again, not just at Mod, just in the world. It's a very real dynamic. And I think spreading modness came about from witnessing that happen again and again at Mod. So spreading modness is the ripple effect of just doing the right thing. It's not more complicated than that.
It's interesting. We had an opportunity to introduce Mod to a friend, somebody who was relatively new to the business yesterday. And we were out visiting some stores, and he had seen something that we call the Book of Mod, which is a very simple little book we put together a few years ago that every squad member gets when they start, just so that we can share with them some of those foundational beliefs and motivations. But in it, there's a graphic, and the graphic has some words in it which say the price of admission is simply the commitment to do the right thing. And that's a saying that came from one of our team members years ago.
In a thank you note.
Yes, yeah. And it was his way of kind of pulling together like what Mod meant to him. And it really resonated with this friend of ours. And he said, that's really powerful. And it's funny because you go through your journey and you kind of lose sight. And it reminded us, that is when you ask, like, what does it mean to be Mod? And I think that's it, which is just a commitment to do the right thing. And I know that sounds maybe very general, but so much of it is about community, connection, how we serve each other. And so much of that comes back to this idea of caring. Do I care about you? Do I care about this journey? And am I prepared to do the hard work to do the right thing in the moment? And we really are trying to build a culture of trust and empowerment of our team. But the price of admission is that if you're going to be a part of this culture of trust and empowerment, you've got to have a commitment to do the right thing. And we're going to empower you to then choose what the right thing is in the moment based on you're closest to the action, you're closest to the situation. Do what you think is right. And as long as you're doing what you think is right, we've got your back. You might make mistakes, but you're not wrong. And that's this journey that we're on. And of course, you always have to refine and course correct, and because you're dealing with humans and people, make mistakes. But I think that to me would be the answer.
And we've been so reminded along the way of just the power of gratitude. I know there's a lot of talk about that in the world, as there should be, that it is so powerful. And this note that Scott is referring to, came from a member of the Mod Squad named Tony, and he sent us a thank you note. This was years ago. And he was really just writing us an old-fashioned thank you note that said, thank you for creating a place where the price of admission is to simply do the right thing. And it was so powerful to receive that note of gratitude, and that statement, I think, really does sum up and is one of probably the best descriptors of what does it mean to be Mod, what is spreading modness. It's just simply doing the right thing. And those words were formed by somebody else and expressed through gratitude, which is kind of a lot of, that getting to gratitude is something that we've observed a lot at Mod, and it's something that we tap into for ourselves, but to hopefully for others to remain inspired and engaged and continuing to do the hard work and get up on the Monday mornings.
And so what if people don't do the right thing and intentionally, I think you said, look, if they genuinely thought it was the right thing, fine, we'll learn from it. So how do you have those really tough conversations in this type of environment? Like I'm trying to think of the culture and maintaining that do the right thing. So how do you encourage your team members to have those tough conversations?
So it's a great question. We are a very distributed team. We have over 10,000 team members, squad members, spread across 550 stores throughout the US and 2 in Canada. And if we're going to build a culture of trust and empowerment in an industry that's used to rules and constraints and not trusting, because the view is with this distributed, we need to make things clear, we need to lock things down, we need to avoid risk. We've tried to do things slightly differently. The price of admission is a commitment to doing the right thing. The consequence of that is, if you don't, and you're choosing not to, then you can't be here. It's as simple as that. Because there are too many people counting on us to manage this. If we're going to trust our team, then the consequence is that people then need to behave in a certain way. And if they make mistakes, that's something we can learn from. But if they intentionally do something that is counter to that, then we have to give them an opportunity to go learn and explore something else. We've often brought people back, but it is a very clear-cut set of expectations that you're here regardless of your background, your personal story, the color of your hair, the color of your skin, what you believe. You're welcome here. We have an incredibly inclusive and accepting culture, but there is an expectation that you will commit to doing the right thing. And if you do, you're welcome here, and we're going to work hard to give you opportunity and to develop you. And if you choose to do something other than that, you're going to have to leave, because the other squad members are counting on us to preserve and protect what is very special. And to do that, we just all need to be on the same page. Otherwise, it just won't work.
Yeah, I mean, leadership and having those courageous conversations is a big part of protecting your culture, right? And I've been part of lots of organizations where maybe those tough conversations didn't happen, and it erodes the culture, right? So I congratulate you on that. Mm-hmm. And my mistake, the 2 locations in Canada, I'm definitely going to have to go visit. Are they Vancouver or Toronto?
They're actually on Vancouver Island, so it's going to make it challenging for you. We decided to start as far west as possible so we could start a march east, but listen, the opportunity in Canada is fantastic. We're super excited about Canada, but there are some distinct challenges, as you well know, with certain constraints around the dairy board and other things which just make the cost of sales. It's a different model that we have to figure out how to match with the market. But we have a really awesome partner in Vancouver Island who's doing things the right way. And we're exploring and continuing to learn. It's part of this journey of testing and learning to figure out exactly how we build mod slightly differently for Canada than in the US. But we have the right team up there taking that challenge on, and they're doing a wonderful job.
Okay, well, I'm going to have to accelerate my next trip out to Vancouver Island. My coach, Wayne Stark, actually lives on Vancouver Island. And one of my favorite people who leads a coffee company called Canterbury Coffee in Vancouver is out west as well. So I congratulate you and look forward to Toronto as well. I know I've worked in cheese for much of my career, so I understand the dairy challenges, but that's fantastic. Okay, so I want to come back to, so purpose-led organization, but I also have worked in finance for much of my career, right? So you're managing economic targets and challenges and inflation and COVID and things like that. How do you balance that equation with, hey, there's I think you mentioned 300 to 400 basis points sometimes that some of the employee initiatives cost you. How do you balance that cost versus the benefit?
It's a great question. I guess the way I'd answer that is we have a framework that we use for guiding our business and the decisions we make and how we set priorities. And it's what we call our flywheel. And there are 4 quadrants to our flywheel, and they're the quadrants that we believe are the real drivers of what makes Mod unique and different and successful. It starts with our purpose. The first quadrant is our authentic purpose of serving people. That leads, if we are successful, to building an engaged and inspired team, which is our second quadrant. The third then is, if that engaged and inspired team understands what we're trying to accomplish, they're going to deliver an incredible experience to our customers, and they will build happy, loyal customers, which is our third quadrant. And if that happens, we will build a successful business, because customers will come in, they'll come back, and that will lead to a successful business, which is the fourth quadrant. A flywheel, to be successful, it has to be in balance. And this is something we spend a lot of time talking to our team about. It's great to say we're a people place and we're all about our purpose, but if that's all we're focused on, the flywheel will not be in balance, and it will not spin, and we won't have a sustainable, healthy business. We have to make sure that those quadrants are always in balance. And that means the more successful we are as a business, the more resource we'll have to put back into our purpose. And there are many, many examples of that. We just launched, for instance, this year, as one small example, an education benefit to our squad, where we're giving free educational opportunities to people who are hungry to grow and learn. And we've invested significantly in that. That's a byproduct of having made enough progress to unlock the resource to, we have a long list of things that we want to add next to kind of continue to deliver a more profound, impactful experience to our squad. The only way we can do that if our business is successful. So that gets back to this dynamic of balancing, for instance, wages and benefits with the price we're charging our customers, and then the health of the business. So all of these things have to stay in balance. And this is one of those things that we spend a lot of time talking to our team about and educating them on, because listen, there's a tension in the restaurant industry. One of the things that you spend a lot of time talking about is managing labor in your stores. It's the number one cost, generally speaking, for a restaurant. And if you're not careful, restaurants are relatively thin margin businesses. And if you are not disciplined in how you manage labor, you can go from a thin profit margin to a loss very quickly. Now, in a people-driven business, managing labor feels like there's a tension there, right? Because, hey, listen, with our people, we're a people place. Let's give people more hours and more opportunity. That's great. But if it's not in balance and we don't have a successful business, then the flywheel is going to stop, and all the opportunities we're giving people, accepting people, bringing people in who have barriers to employment, providing community and opportunity for them, and then seeing them grow, that journey is not going to continue if we can't keep everything in balance. And it is a constant discussion and a constant challenge, because of course you'd love to be doing more of everything, but you can't. You have to keep it holistically balanced. And that's just the tension that we have to manage. But if we frame it up correctly for people, where they see that as the flywheel turns, there's more resource to be driving back into our purpose, and they get that, they start to see how managing our costs, delivering a great experience to our customers, will get that flywheel turning in a way where it will come back to the team in more resources, more training, more compensation. But it's a constant conversation that we have to keep things in balance.
So how do you have that conversation? Do you have like many town halls, or do you do lots of visits? Like you said over 500 stores. How do you keep that balance between the P&L and the purpose together? Like, really intriguing.
It's a constant conversation. You said it. And we have to come up with ways, a myriad of ways, whether or not it's the book of Mod that we share with everyone. We have town halls. We have all hands meetings, huddles with all of our team every month. We do leadership huddles, because at the end of the day, leadership matters. And one of our big calls to action over the last few years as we've been emerging from the pandemic is making sure that everyone at Mod has the leader they deserve. Because if you have the leader you deserve, they're going to be talking to you about these things and educating you and bringing you along. They're not just going to be telling you and commanding you. they're going to be serving you. Servant leadership. We call it leading by serving others. And if I'm a district manager and I'm leading a team of 8 general managers, my job is to make sure you understand that. And it's not just what you have to do. It's why are we doing this? And how does this flywheel work? And because that's going to help you, whether or not you stay at Mod for a long time or you go on to something else, you're going to become more informed about how to be a successful leader and manager and business owner. And so these things matter. Leadership matters, communication matters, and making sure we're consistent with the message. And then we're explaining to people the why behind things. When we roll out a new initiative, they need to understand, how does that fit into the flywheel? Why is this an important thing? So that they'll understand it, own it, and then share it with their teams. And it's just this constant. They say that the destiny of an organization is a byproduct of the conversations you're having, and that's a really important focus for us, is making sure that we're having the right conversations regularly internally.
We're lucky because 15 years ago, fast casual was a newly emerging notion, and there was no fast casual pizza, and so we had to become a laboratory to create a category, not to mention our concept. I would say, your question is the right question to be asking, and Scott's response is, I watch him as CEO every single day, and we continue to be in a laboratory mindset around this. It is not, we have not cracked the code on. It is an absolutely daily consideration, discussion. There's work going on around this, figuring this out in real time. And that's part of what makes this work fun and inspiring, because there is such a challenge, but such an opportunity there. And we talk about this thing, referred to as conscious capitalism. We refer to it as enlightened capitalism. We really do believe, and we need a business to be force for good and to really solve the problems of today. We know it can happen. So the work that continues to go on to figure this out is the work of the day. Like, that is the laboratory mindset we have now. And we're employing all of the same things that we were doing 50 years ago, where it was just having fun trying to figure out, could we create a category or concept? Did not know what we were doing. We had so much to learn. The level of learning and the amount of learning and the challenge of the opportunity is no less today. It's more. And it's this stuff. It's what you're asking about that is the work of today.
Yeah, no, there's a book, I think it's called Radical Candor,
Yes.
And they talk about, and I may be mistaken this, but it's the conversation is the relationship. That's a quote that pops in my mind as you talk. And, I get the impression the two of you are not just sitting back and watching this thing grow, you're actively involved in the daily conversations, right? Which is so important for leaders to not just sit back, but take care of their people, put people first. And I congratulate both of you for the tremendous ongoing success that you're both having and the changes to the world. So before we go, any books or resources? You've quoted a couple of fantastic resources. Anything else that's kind of you go to frequently that reminds you of this way of living?
Oh my gosh, there's so much. We do, we talk a lot internally about resources and books and things to tap into. I'll just name a few that have been important for us and our team over the years. 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is one that I recommend to people regularly. I think it's an important place to start. How do you show up and lead yourself in a productive and healthy way? Jim Collins' work, Good to Great, and the other books are books that we love. I see one of the books that we talk about a lot behind you, Start With Why. And there's another book by Simon that is 2 other books that we've talked about with our team, which is Leaders Eat Last, which is another great book that kind of captures a lot of how we think about showing up, as well as The Infinite Game. We really feel like we are in this infinite game. It's a long-term journey that we're on. Another one that the team really loved recently as a book that the team was sharing, which was The Slight Edge. This idea of these small little habits, and you do things consistently, and it starts to tip in a way where you really make profound changes through small changes in behavior. And then the last one I'll share, just because it's one that Allie and I have given out to a lot of people recently, and it's one that we love, And it kind of captures a lot of the stuff we're talking about philosophically, which is the Book of Joy, which is a book that shares this week-long retreat that Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama had, sharing their life's wisdom around joy. And it's just this incredibly profound insight for people, because listen, at the end of the day, what are we all looking for? We're looking to have as much joy, happiness, contentment in our lives. Well, these are two incredibly seasoned, experienced, thoughtful, spiritual leaders. And basically in one book, they say, well, here's what we found around how you find joy in the journey. And that for us is kind of the punchline to all of this. It's like you got to, that's what brings it all together. So lots of good resources.
Sticking with the personal pleasures that we've been enjoying in this regard, the only two I would add, one, just as a woman, and for any other women, I really loved this podcast called Wiser Than Me with Julia Louis-Dreyfus. She just interviews women that are a little bit older than she is, and it's all about these women are wiser than me, and I want to capture their wisdom. And she ends each of her interviews with them. She finishes and she says, wow, that woman definitely is wiser than me, and now I've got to call my mom. And she calls her mom, and you listen to this conversation of how she's telling her mom everything she learned. It's just, it's a great reminder that there's so much wisdom out there, and it's really fun and quite a wonderful indulgence to take the time to tap into it. And then personally, something that we've been really enjoying, and I think it's super powerful. And we've been spending time listening to Sam Harris and his Waking Up program, and highly recommend it. And it's something that we're really, really enjoying, and I think benefiting from.
Amazing. I think I've read about 70% of those, so I have some reading and listening to do. But I think I'll end on that note to say thank you to two people who are a lot wiser than me, and I really appreciate both of you for the amazing things you're doing across the world.
Well,
so
thank you for having us.
This has been fun. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for having us. This has been a fun conversation.